On Wednesday the 26th of March, just last month, an 11-year-old boy named Justyce Rich ran away from his foster home in Durham, North Carolina, and hasn't been seen since. In the 4 weeks following his disappearance, shockingly, almost no one seems to be talking about it. There are no major news reports or press conferences, and public outcry remains limited. In fact, the only reason this story is even being told is because a concerned member of the public took it upon themselves to contact the police directly. As a foster child, Justyce likely has no family advocating for him, and therefore no parents to fight for media coverage and no one demanding answers from the officials, meaning he is one of the many missing children who seem to have fallen between the cracks. However, the harsh reality is that the longer this silence continues, the harder it becomes to find him. So, with this in mind, I fear it is up to us to try and help the situation, as we are only left to wonder, what really happened to Justyce Rich, and why do the local media outlets not seem to care? Justyce Rich was born in the year 2013. However, as far as his family history goes, there is very limited information online about his upbringing. What we do know, however, is that he was eventually given away by his parents and left in the care of foster families, likely due to their inability to take responsible care of him. He was then raised by these foster families from a young age, attending a local school in Durham, but again, it is unknown how stable this education was, and at which age his parents decided to give him up. Now, it must be said that any comments about his biological family cannot exceed the realms of speculation, as we simply don't know enough about Justyce's background. But an assumption we can make about his foster family is that there was certainly some kind of rift between them, as it would seem to be a disagreement amongst the household that would eventually lead to his strange and sudden disappearance on that fateful day in March. On Wednesday the 26th of March, the 11-year-old schoolboy was spending the day at his foster home in Durham, when he would unexpectedly get into a heated disagreement with his legal guardians. The argument then began to escalate, and after an unknown period of time, Justyce would eventually decide to relieve himself from the situation by walking away from the house to cool off. However, little did anybody know at the time that this would be the last official sighting of Justyce, as rather than returning home later that day as expected, he would never be seen again. So, rightfully concerned by this turn of events, his foster family realised that they had no other option but to report him missing to the local police. On Thursday the 27th of March, the Durham Police Department would respond to a call detailing the disappearance of a young boy from the local area. And according to the caller, he had left after getting into a heated dispute with his foster family. It is unknown who this caller was, whether it was a member of the household he was living in or a concerned citizen who witnessed the events, but either way, the report was filed and the police issued a statement on their Facebook page. The details of the case were then shared with organisations like the National Centre for Missing and Exploited Children and the Black and Missing Foundation. But despite the alarming details of the case, major news outlets repeatedly rejected the story. A concerned citizen even took it upon themselves to contact every local news station and also tried to speak directly to state leaders like Governor Josh Stein or Senators Ted Budd or Tom Tillis. But despite their efforts, the case remained frustratingly quiet. So, given this strange reaction from the media, many started to wonder if the story was even real and began contacting the authorities directly to find out if Justyce was still missing. But heartbreakingly, not only did they find out that the story was legitimate, but it also became painfully clear that Justyce had been missing for weeks without a single sighting. So, desperate to spread awareness, the public then began sharing the story all over Facebook, in the hopes that somebody would come forward with information that would help solve the case. However, after 4 weeks of investigating, Justyce Rich still remains a missing person to this day, leaving a police force scratching their heads and a community heartbroken as they are only left to ponder the harsh reality of the situation. Now, unfortunately, as far as the official investigation goes, this is all we know for now. but thanks to the continued support of online sleuths and organisations such as OP Nation, the case just about remains in the public eye, with many people refusing to give up on justice. So with this in mind, we have to stay positive that it will only be a matter of time before the truth is revealed and Justice is found alive and well. However, given that he has now been missing for over 4 weeks, alongside the extremely concerning details of his case, I can't help but feel that the likelihood of his safe return is only growing weaker as the days pass. So with that, let's get into some of the potential theories. Now, just before I get into the theories themselves, I wanted to quickly mention that I am personally shocked and appalled by the lack of media attention this case is getting. We are talking about an 11-year-old boy who has been away from home for 4 weeks, and yet not a single mainstream news station has covered his case or even shared his story on their social media. For this reason, it means I have absolutely no concrete proof of any theories I'm about to discuss, as nothing about this case has been revealed by the police or inspected by the media. Therefore, please make sure to take everything I say going forward with a pinch of salt, as these theories really are nothing more than speculation. But saying this, one idea that I think troubles just about everybody is that there is a strong possibility that Justice was intercepted by somebody with bad intentions, as I can think of no other reasonable explanation as to how he could be missing for this long without being reported to the police. I'm sure you can understand why I would rather not get into the detail of what could have occurred, as once again we are talking about an 11-year-old boy here, but for the sake of drawing attention to the danger surrounding this case, there is a very strong possibility that he could have been abducted that day, and yet the police response seems to have been minimal at best. However, rather than dwelling on this theory for too long, I implore you to please have your own respectful discussions in the comments, and I'll move on to the other most likely theory in my opinion, which is that he could have been intercepted by somebody from his biological family. Now, as I mentioned at the start of this video, we have very limited information about Justice's upbringing and even less knowledge about his biological family, but I suppose it could be conceivable that they wanted to steal him away from his foster family, as they wanted him back but had no legal footing to do so. Again, this is purely speculation, but for the sake of being positive, this would be one of the better outcomes of the case, as it would likely mean he is somewhat safe and away from danger. However, saying this, we do not know for sure that even if he was stolen by his biological family, that he is actually safe, as if this is the case, I'm sure there was a good reason that he was moved into foster care in the first place. But before I get too carried away with this idea, another theory which I was only recently introduced to is the possibility that he could have already been rescued in another state, but due to poor communication, the Durham Police Department may not have been notified. Now, if you're familiar with my channel, then you may remember a case I covered last year which discussed the disappearance of a young teenage girl named Asata Amun. Well, if you do, then you will be very happy to hear that she was recently discovered alive and well in the custody of the Tennessee Department of Children's Services under a different name. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this story, to give you some context behind the case, on Thursday the 1st of February in 2024, the 16-year-old girl was captured by a doorbell camera running out of her house with no shoes on her feet before she would mysteriously disappear. The next day she was reported missing by her father Kwabena after he watched the footage from the night before, but despite leaving in her bright pink pyjamas, no witnesses would ever come forward. In the days leading up to this incident, Asata had complained to her mother Jasmine that she didn't want to stay with her father anymore, but given their parental agreement, there wasn't much that could be done. However, it would be revealed months later that the couple had actually divorced due to the fact that Kwabena had been abusive in the relationship. So once the police were made aware of this, they immediately decided to conduct a search of the property. But even after bringing Kwabena in for questioning and seizing as much evidence as they could, the case remained unsolved. At least, that was the case until February of this year, when it was finally revealed that Asata had been in protective custody the entire time. So, as you can probably guess, the reason I mention this case is because I want to remain hopeful that Justice's story could have a similar ending, But for now, all we can really do is continue to spread his image across the internet, and hope that it will only be a matter of time before he's found alive and brought to safety. Anyway, on that note, I think I'll leave this video here. But as always, if you have any other theories of your own which you think may help explain what really happened to Justyce Rich, please leave your ideas in the comments down below and I'll do my best to get back to you. But until next time, thank you so much for watching, and make sure to subscribe to the channel for updates on these stories. Also, if you would like to learn more about some of the other cases involving young children of colour, feel free to check out the video on screen now, which covers the disturbing disappearance of Keyshawn Williams.